about new default switches that we added in the backend, and I'll walk you through what they can do. The first one is set the modified contract rate by default. So let's go back to the application again, and the switches, all of them, you can find them into the accounting settings. For the administrators that we have online, you already know this is the most important setting page. You have all the ingredients for the accounting type of choices that the users have in the front end. And the first default switch that we introduce is modify contract rate by default. So if you enable the switch, the modified contract rate checkbox will be by default selected. So if we leave it unselected, let's pick a contract here, and I need to pick another contract, one that is active, not in lease end. So I'm gonna take out my filter. I'm going to a contract, and from the contract level, I am going to mimic a lease modification. I'm not at the contract level, I'm sorry. Moving back to the contract level, and if I click on a lease modification, you can see that the modified contract rate is not selected. My switch is off. So let's turn on the switch. And I'm clicking saving. As with every change that I'm doing into the manager page, this is a very important step. And for the list modification, if I'm selecting the list modification now, yeah, you can see the modified contract rate is on. So this is something towards the optimize of the user journey, and what we think will save time depending on whether you want to have the changes of the contract rate with every event or not, depending on your own internal policy. So this is something that that can be discussed, and based on the internal decision, the administrator can set this switch on or off depending on what you need to do. And coming back to the presentation, the other two switches are related to option within the batch management. Is the set user terms and condition by default, and apply earlier indexation by default. And as we are going to the batches, I'm gonna show you select where you have the list and in mass option. So let's go back to the application. And we need to access the batch management. We are going into the batches, and we create new batches. So first, I'm going to show you where the mass listen is, and it's part of the workflow mass transition. Is one of the actions that are available. I'm just going to put a name here so I can move on to the action. And within the action, you can see here the listen is available. So you can perform the listen for all the contracts that are valid, for example. And you might remember in previous sessions where we talked about different types of ending a contract. For all the contracts where the operational transactions have been posted, you can simply run the listen to see how many contracts in listen or where the listen can be done. So this is a great way to check. So you can maybe check back to our March or April sessions. We talked a lot about this, and we talked about the listen option as well. So I hope this is answering your question, Saleh. And I would like to talk about the new switches that we introduced. And the first one, it is in the workflow mass transition, but it's part of the activation group. We are talking about the approval, and as you know, as we are going through the actions for the activation group, we have the send to assessment, the first one, and we will need to select something here, or maybe I can go by default with something because I want to show you the inputs. And I can go as large as I need or as concentrated as I need, but what I wanted to show you is the user terms and condition and the significance of this of this information. So if you hover with your mouse over it, you will have additional information, and it says by checking this checkbox, the batch manager will not exercise all the available terms and conditions automatically. So what does it mean? As you know, in the terms and condition of a contract, you can have certain terms that are likely to exercise and other that are not likely to exercise. So you can have a base rent and multiple extension that you don't know for sure if you are going to exercise them or not. So at inception, you can leave them as unexercised. So if you want to go through the workflow process where pretty much do the approval steps in batch, but you want to keep the choice that the user made. So it was base rent, likely to exercise, extension, unlikely to exercise. You need to click this on. If you do not, then the system is going to set every terms and condition likely to exercise. And for those of you that lately have been through some processes where you've done things in mass, this is something that we discussed about it. But we realize once again, for the easiness, for the users who are doing this, especially for a lot of contracts, it will be best to set a switch to allow this input to be made by a default position. So if you want this to always be on, all you need to do is set the user terms and condition on. So you will need to, as you saw earlier, when I was going through the inputs, the input was not checked, was left blank. That's because my switch here is also off. So let me show you. If I'm coming back here and let's turn on the switch. Okay. And I'm not sure if I think I need to create a new batch in order to take into consideration the changes that I made. Once again, I'm in the workflow mass transition. Let me see if I can go directly to the inputs. You cannot go directly to my inputs. Okay, send to assessment. Let me select very largely here. Okay. So now as I walked again through all the steps, you can see the input has been selected by default because that's the position of my switch. So now let's talk about the third one, this apply earlier indexation by default. As you know, for extensions and in contracts where you have indexation, you have that little checkbox that is available when you are performing extensions. So now if you want your users to always take into consideration the previous indexation, you have that option. Also because it was easily overlooked. So we had situation where the users were creating an extension, but they forgot to apply earlier indexation. So then the extension wouldn't have the indexation as well. So once again, the switch is enabling a smoother user experience for that. Let me go back to a contract where we have an indexation. So this is a contract that has an indexation. So let's apply lease modification. I'm going to set the amendment date for today. As you know, this is not a date with implication in the calculation. I'm setting new terms and condition. I don't want to modify the rate, and I'm clicking submit. And once the system is creating my draft, I'm going to show you in adding an extension what that little switch can do. So we have here a contract with base rent, and there were 2 indexation events that happened. So let me add an extension here. I'm adding an extension. As you can see, I have the apply earlier indexation on here on. I mean, like, it is available, so I can put it on and off as I need to. In a lot of circumstances, you will need to apply the earlier indexation. You want to move along with the indexation that was applied before. So this is something that the user will have to do. So it's an extra step. But as you can see, this is a user's choice right now, so they will need to remember doing that, of course, as always. And some of the things that I repeat a lot is that once you enter the terms, once you apply the modification, it's very important that you perform the modification. So it can be argued that this is something that can be caught during the validation of the draft. But once again, as I was mentioning, we thought about the user experience and how this will be a smoother type of action, having that apply earlier indexation, having to do the judgment only if they don't want to have that. So let's turn on the switch in the backend. Once again, I need to save in the manager page. I'm here and I'm in the draft. I might need to maybe start over with the draft, but let's give it a try. So I'm adding an extension. All right, I did not have to, so you can see the apply earlier indexation is already on. So this will help and avoid some of the situation where the users forgot to add the indexation for the extension. So I think we've done the tour of the new features, and especially the ones that we consider they're the most exciting, and you have a lot of new in our view important changes, especially for the reports. For the switches is something that you might need to discuss, to see internally with your team. And we went through all the new features and enhancements, the biggest ones in our view. We are at the scheduling of the report, another topic, but I think we're better to leave it for another time. And I want to take your time to make an announcement. It's a sad announcement, and one of the reason for us here, it's a very emotional session. Maybe some of you are aware, but our friend and lovely colleague Mario Dominguez Ugalde passed away last month, and the July office hour was his last one, and the August one is the first one without him. And that's the reason, among others, that we are cracking up here, and it's hard, but we are moving on. And we continue in the spirit that he brought to this session. He had a passion for sharing information, for teaching others, and we're striving to do the same. He was such a kind soul and somebody we always look up to. And I used to joke that he's somebody that I would like to be when I eventually grow up. So we'll have to grow up without him now. and we dedicate this session to him, and I hope we made him proud, and we're ending the session here. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you next time. Hi, Olof. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Olof, you wanted to say something?
No, I just pressed the wrong button.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll be stopping the recording and see you next time.